Hi guys, it's Artemis Game here, and I'm doing something a little bit different today because I really want to talk about The Last of Us TV show. But before we get into it, don't worry, this video is completely spoiler free. You can also see the time codes in the description if you want to skip to a certain part. With that out the way, let's jump into it. Anyone living under a rock, The Last of Us was released in 2013 by Naughty Dog, and to say it did well is an understatement. It went on to win loads of awards, including Game of the Year, and it even got a second game, which I won't be revealing which side of the fence I am in regards to that in this video. Because of how well it did when it was released, it was automatically signed for some kind of adaptation, and it was originally going to be a movie, but they ended up settling on a TV adaptation. Now, I absolutely hate scary games, particularly zombies. However, I adored this game. The story was compelling, the characters were relatable, and you really did root for them. Now, I don't know about you, but ever since Game of Thrones decided to commit suicide, I've been absolutely desperate for a good adaptation that wasn't written by potatoes. I waited patiently as the Witcher adaptation had its brains dashed against the wall. And the Ring of Power, well, the less said about that the better. But what I will say is I can remember before Rings of Power came out, I said it was going to be crap. It looked crap. Just from the trailer alone, it was very apparent that the writing was dog shit, the score was boring, the combat was unrealistic, and the acting was okay at best.
There's a tempest in me.
I take no joy from the fact that I was who am I kidding? Oh god, I told you so. Anyway, because of this, it got to the point where when The Last of Us show was announced, I was absolutely gutted. They were going to destroy one of my favourite games just to put their stamp on it. Then I looked into who was actually putting the show together. It turns out Craig Mazin, who created the epic Chernobyl, and Neil Druckmann, who was the lead developer on The Last of Us game and wrote some of the graphic novels based around the game, are the two showrunners. This got me excited. It also led me down a rabbit hole where I found smaller details like the fact that Gustavo Santaolalla, who did the music for The Last of Us games, is also doing the score for the adaptation. And they were also bringing back some of the original voice acting cast for some minor roles in the show. For the first time in a long time, I have a good feeling about this adaptation. I really hope I'm not proven wrong, but unlike Rings of Power, I don't have a horrible sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach this time. Now, Rings of Power and The Last of Us are apples and oranges in terms of story, setting, and well, basically everything, and I do get that, but I feel like, at least in terms of creating the bare bones, The Last of Us is off to a really good start adaptation-wise. So, with that being said, let's take a look at the world in which our story takes place. It's the story of Joel and Ellie, an unlikely pair who are on a journey to cure the world of the zombie apocalypse. It starts 20 years after a cordyceps outbreak. So cordyceps are real fungi which infect insects such as ants. It exists in the real world. It's disgusting. Look it up. This fungi infects the ants and ends up controlling their brains, turning them essentially into zombies. Once in control, these cordyceps instruct the ants to infect other ants, and thus the fungi spreads, creating a lot of zombie ants. So in the game, cordyceps have evolved to infect the human brain and subsequently turn people into zombies, hell-bent on destroying all the healthy individuals. Cordyceps spread through bites in the game, but they can also spread through parasitic airborne spore, meaning that people need to walk around with gas masks on. It seems apparent that this has been changed in the show and replaced with brain-controlling tendrils. I'm not sure why, but hopefully it is for good reason. We'll find out in a few days, I suppose. Our story starts by introducing Joel and his partner Tess, both smugglers who smuggled goods out of Fedra, which is the Federal Disaster Response Agency. Fedra seized control after the downfall of humanity, and in present day enforce oppressive quarantines and also force people to live off basic rations, which they don't always give them. So Joel and Tess smuggle resources in and out of Fedra, and during one of their smuggling escapades, they come across Marlene, who's a member of the Fireflies. Now, the Fireflies are a rebel group that are fighting against Fedra and their oppressive ways. Marlene manages to convince Joel and Tess to smuggle a teenage girl called Ellie out of Fedra and to the Fireflies' main base. So the Fireflies have an idea to cure the zombie infection with the help of Ellie, and thus starts our protagonist's dangerous journey to the Firefly headquarters. That's the story in a nutshell, and our characters are flawed. I use the word protagonist very loosely. It would be really hard pressed to call Joe a good guy, considering the lengths that he's gone to survive over the years, and Ellie was born and raised in a post-apocalyptic world leading to a hardened outer shell and a massive abandonment complex. Yet these two characters make a genuine human connection, and it makes you want to be a part of their journey. You're happy when they're happy, and when their world falls apart, so does yours. But most of all, you really feel the consequences of their actions and you root for them. I'm obviously not going to spoil the ending, but I will say it is just perfect. I'm so excited for you guys to see it. Generally what you tend to find in zombie tropes, there's one main species of zombie. However, that's not the case in The Last of Us, so we'll go over the types of zombies that you're going to find in the story. Now, as I said earlier, the zombies are humans who've been infected by the brain-controlling cordyceps. However, the longer someone's infected, the more fucked up in manner and appearance they become. So stage 1 are the runners. So these terrifying fuckers have recently been infected and still have a lot of speed behind them. They just come charging at you screaming, all the while I'm running away from them screaming. Stage 2 are the stalkers. Stalkers have been infected for around 2 weeks to a year. They're a lot smarter than the runners in the respect that they hide from their prey and wait for an opportune moment to attack them. Some have been known to latch onto walls and stay alive until some unbeknownst person walks by, jumping out and grabbing them, and this has created some fantastic jump scares. Stage 3 are the clickers. These are the worst zombies in my opinion, genuinely terrifying. After a year of infection, the cordyceps have now grown out through the eyes and the face of the infected individual, rendering them completely blind, but because of this, they've developed super hearing and echolocation. So they're basically super zombies who are smart, fast, strong, and the most fear-inducing things in the whole bloody world. Stage 4 are the bloaters. These gargantuan fuckers have been infected for several years. They're blind and slow, which means they're not as scary as the clickers. However, they're very strong due to the fact that the cordyceps have grown thick and acted as armour around the infected. Also, fun fact, they can rip off parts of their body and throw them at people in an attempt to infect them with spore bombs. But because the spores aren't a thing in the show, I'm not sure that's really going to be included. Stages 5 and 6 are from The Last of Us 2, so might not make an appearance in season 1 of the show. Either way, I thought it best to mention it just in case. Stage 5 are the shamblers. This is another branch of mutation for those who've been infected for several years. Shamblers are water dwellers who expel acid and spore clouds. While they're not as physically enhanced as clickers and bloaters, they're still pretty goddamn dangerous, owing to the fact that when they're killed, they explode spores everywhere. I'm curious to see how these wonderful creatures are going to be depicted in the show. Lastly, we have stage 6, which is the Rat King. Now, this big boy is seemingly the only one of its kind, or the only one that we've come across. They were found in a Seattle hospital 20 years after D-Day, and they're made up of several infected all combined into one big nightmare fuel. They're very strong, very huge, and it has the ability to break individual infected from its huge frame and chuck them at you. What an absolute babe. 10 out of 10 would smash. So now we know what's going on with the story, let's look at what we know about the show. So far, we know that the first season's going to be based on the first game, and that's including the DLC Left Behind, which was a prequel which follows Ellie and a girl named Riley and takes place just before the start of the main game. Due to the fact that it's a TV show, Mason has hinted that more elements will be included in the show compared to the game. Apparently there was loads of stuff that was left out of the game, and Mason thought it would be an amazing opportunity to include some of that stuff that they couldn't fit in. We know that it's not going to be a play-by-play adaptation. Things have been added and things have been changed. As I mentioned earlier, they've gotten rid of spores, but they've also made a few minor changes too. For instance, there are some characters who have had their part beefed up a bit, such as Frank, who played a very, very small role in the game. And there are some new characters altogether, such as Anna, who's Ellie's mother. Another fun fact, she's played by Ashley Johnson, who was the voice of Ellie in the games. Another change is the timeline. In the games, D-Day was in 2013 and the game is set in 2033. However, the show will be set in 2023, making D-Day an entire decade earlier in 2003. All in all, these changes don't seem to be bad, and I'm excited to see what role Frank plays. So yeah, that's all I've got so far. Honestly, I shouldn't be this excited about this adaptation. In the past, I've found zombie tropes pretty boring. I noped out of The Walking Dead after about 2 seasons. I think as a film, it works a little bit better, but as a TV show, it gets more and more difficult to make the zombies seem threatening once you've seen your characters survive them for more than a season. I'm feeling hopefully optimistic that the strength of the story and the character relationships in this will be enough to counter it though. I really hope this doesn't suck. Anyway, that's all from me. Let me know if you want to see more The Last of Us content, as I'd toyed with the idea of doing an episode by episode breakdown. Also, I stream live on Twitch on Wednesdays and Thursdays, so pop along and say hi. The links are in the description. As always, press all the buttons, do all the things, and I'll catch you next time. Toodaloo! I need to sing a stupid happy little catchy song because YouTube is stupid and it gets it wrong. So if they try to copyright claim this right now, it just goes to show it's all a big cash cow.